Automation. It's one of those things that if you're not in marketing or advertising or IT, a lot of times when you think automation, you're like, okay, what is this and is it for me? And then when we throw in AI into the mix, it seems almost kind of confusing or kind of daunting. But today, we're going to change that. We're going to talk about some simple ways that you can automate your media marketing with AI to grow your company and to grow your career. So, hey, welcome. This is Everyday AI. This is your daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter helping everyday people like you and me learn generative AI and also how we can leverage it to grow our companies and to grow our careers. And hey, I'm excited for today's guest because we're going to be able to dork out a little bit on different ways that you can use Gen AI to help really automate your media marketing so you can create more and better content for your current clients to get more customers, all those great things. So stick around for that. And if you are new here, thanks for joining us. If you're joining us live, get your comments in. What do you want to know about how to use AI to automate your media and marketing? Let us know and we'll tackle that. If you are joining us on the podcast, thanks as always. Make sure to check out your show notes. There's always more information related episodes, as well as a link to our website where you can go sign up for our daily newsletter at youreverydayai.com. All right, before we get into today's discussion, let's first do what we always do and talk about what's going on in the world of AI news. So, pretty big things. So, the EU over the weekend reached a deal on its landmark AI bill. So, the European Union officials have reached a deal on the most ambitious law to regulate AI, setting a global standard to manage risks, enforce transparency, and penalize noncompliance. The AI Act will require tech companies to disclose data and undergo rigorous testing for high-risk applications. European countries and parliament representatives had contentious debates over exemptions for security forces and the use of facial recognition technology, two big things in that bill, leading to compromises in the final deal. Also, very noteworthy, these regulations will not come into effect until 2025. So that's leaving room for other countries to potentially undercut EU's plans and to be kind of the first country or the first group of countries to have a major AI bill. All right, second piece of news, Mistral AI has reached a $4 billion valuation in a very interesting release of their new model. So Mistral AI is a Paris startup, and they raised $415 million in funding. And sorry, that was a $2 billion valuation for its open source approach to building chatbots and other AI-driven products. So this new approach, essentially what they did is they released their Mistral AI, their new model, which is MOE 8X7B. That one doesn't really roll off the tongue, but they released it with a guerrilla marketing style tactic of simply sharing their model through an open source torrent link. So they just shared their model online, no fanfare. And this approach is being praised by investors and experts, although it is being countered by companies like OpenAI and Google, who are taking a much more traditional and non guerrilla marketing approach to their releases. And then last but not least, Spotify has cut its staff and is focusing more on AI, and its investors are happy about that. So Spotify is a leader in the audio streaming business and known for its personalized user experience. And they've been implementing changes such as AI to recommended podcasts and expanding into new markets. So the company has gone through 3 rounds of large layoffs, yet its stock price, as reported today, is up more than 135% year to date. So despite facing all of these layoffs and financial challenges, the company's investment in AI and podcasting are predicted to drive engagement and potential future success. And hey, hot take here. You're going to see a lot of this going into 2024. I think a lot of really big layoffs with big companies saying that they're focusing on AI, and their stock prices are going to reflect that and actually go up. Wall Street hates employees, y'all. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk today about how to automate your media marketing with AI. I'm extremely excited for today's episode. So if you are joining us live, thank you. Make sure to get your questions in for my guest today. So as I bring him on, very excited to have on the show today. There we go. We got him live. Mark Savant, who is the founder of Mark Savant Media. Mark, thank you so much for joining Everyday AI.
Jordan, thrilled to be here and talk about the most important, consequential technology of our entire generation. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. As am I, as is a lot of our audience already joining us. So Brian saying good morning from Minnesota, Tara joining from Nashville. We have people all over the place joining us. Woozy from Kansas City. Thank you all for joining us. What questions do all of you have? If you're joining us live, what questions do you have about automating your media marketing with AI? But let's start at the top, Mark. Maybe just tell everyone a little bit about what it is you actually do with your company, Mark Savant Media.
Yeah, so I launched and automate podcasts for businesses. And I had my first taste of AI about a year and a half ago. I had a key team member come to me in the morning, Monday morning, busy, say, Mark, I quit. I was like, oh, great, fantastic. Glad to hear it. And I did what most business owners do, and I put out a job listing and started doing the work myself to keep up with the client work. Became overwhelmed immediately, Jordan. It was terrible. I was like not getting sleep. I'm like jumping from project to project to project, trying to manage sales, HR, CX, all of it. And I said, well, there's got to be a better way. I started using AI in some of my workflows, and I saved up to 90% of my time, specifically in the copywriting field. And I was blown away by how it changed my business. I trained my whole team on it. I developed a new onboarding system for new team members, getting them trained on it. And I was like, this is going to change the world. This is going to change the world. And since then, about 3 months after that, I quit my day job, went all in, and now I again am committed to helping business owners launch and automate podcasts with AI.
I love that. And, probably like something, even what Brian right here is saying in the comments, saying, yeah, can relate to that. Because that's very relatable. Because, Mark, I think, what you just described there is something that a lot of maybe especially small business owners, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs are going through right now, where they're maybe on this fence, kind of like what you said. Maybe, they're losing a team member or maybe wanting to grow, and they're having to go through that thought process of, okay, am I going to go about this the traditional way, hiring more staff, or am I just going to maybe instead invest in different processes, different, marketing automation or marketing standards with the current team? What was it maybe that you said? Obviously, getting to that 90% is shocking, but maybe what was it? Going through that process when you lost a key employee, and when you're trying to work in generative AI into that system, what was it that made you say, "Oh, okay, this could work with just diving in deeper into AI versus diving in deeper with more team members"?
Well, a year and a half, about a year prior to that, I had started to hear some rumblings in the podcast industry about using AI to expedite certain processes like writing show notes, emails, blog posts. And I was just kind of like, it's not there yet. It's not ready yet. It was still very clunky. But this world is moving really fast, like crazy fast. And every day new stuff happens, which is why newsletters like what you're doing is important. The EU thing is pretty wild. And I don't want to go too far off the wall onto this, but when I hear major consulting companies like McKinsey saying, within the next 7 years, 30% of the workforce is going to be displaced. And we hear the World Economic Forum say, yeah, within about 12 months, 70 million jobs are going to be obsolete. I'm thinking like, well, what do we do? Do we slow this down? The flip side, though, is, regulating technology is only going to hurt your development on a global scale. The world is really changed. So I think that now more so than any time, I'm 40 years old. I know, don't boomer me. Don't boomer me. I'm 40. But now more so than any time in history is the time where you cannot afford to be complacent. If you are complacent, that apathy is going to really hurt you when you are replaced by software and businesses that are trying to find ways to streamline operations.
So you bring up an interesting point there, Mark, and I want to do the same by kind of also aging myself, because I'm in a similar age group as you, and it seems like normally you might see these innovations getting kind of in place in a company by a younger generation, right? Or sometimes it's the generation with the most experience. But at least in my experience so far, in talking with more than 100 different people on the Everyday AI show, it almost seems like it's those in our position, right? Those in their mid 30s to mid 40s that are really pushing Gen AI forward at companies, because it's people that have enough, a decade or two experience, going through the kind of quote unquote old school traditional way of working, yet they have enough of their career ahead of them where they know it's worthwhile to invest. Is that something that you've seen as well? Or would you say that's more of just like a case by case basis in terms of the people that are really pushing generative AI forward?
I mean, I think so. The younger generation, people in their 20s and early 30s, I think, are the ones who are building out a lot of this, a lot of the actual software itself, right? You see people like Sam Altman, for example, over at OpenAI. But what entrepreneurs, what business owners know is, like, once you've tasted it, like I did, saving 90%, you're like, whoa, this is wild. This is crazy. I mean, you look at animation, for example. Animation is a very laborious job. It takes a lot of time. But now you do have companies like Pika Labs and Runway ML, where you can just type in some text and it's generating spectacular results very, very quickly. So every industry is going to be changed dramatically. And again, once you've tasted it, then you're like, wow, this software never sleeps. It never gets tired. It never needs to go on vacation, never gets sick. Running a large organization becomes very challenging because people are challenging, right? That's, I think, what makes it special. But if I know that I can start to automate parts of my process to technology, to AI, and it's going to save me huge percentages of profit and hassle, it's going to happen from the top down. And what's going to happen? You're going to start to see this. You can fact check me, internet. I know you love to do that, YouTube. Within the next several months, you're going to see huge organizations start to have these AI training days. Okay. And what they're going to be doing is separating the wheat from the chaff. They're going to be saying, who is this person that actually gets it and is on board with using AI in their daily workflow? Let's push them up the corporate ladder. And who are these people that are averse and they kind of want to do it the way that they've always done it, and they believe that quote unquote human to human connection is king? Let's shift them out. And so I think, for me personally, I don't know about you, Jordan, but I think that like that age bracket of 45 to 55, 45 to 60 is probably the most at risk to this new tech coming out.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and I do want to follow up on that, Mark, because you mentioned something that I think is key when it comes to not just leveraging generative AI, but how to actually get it to work for your business. And I want to dive in a little bit deeper because you talked about human to human, right? Which seems to be the new like hot marketing trend. With now that everything generative AI is starting to take over. Is that a real thing, right? Human to human, or do you think maybe that's just a scapegoat for companies that maybe don't want to incorporate generative AI top to bottom, this human to human? What's your take on that?
I mean, human to human is everything. Human to human is everything, but AI allows for more human to human conversations. And I'll give you an example. And listen, y'all, I know this never happens on LinkedIn, but you get a DM from a random person with a very generic message, and you're like, oh, great, another one of these. Thanks, John Smith. Appreciate the spam in my inbox, because it looks exactly like spam. You can see it, you know it as soon as you see it, right? But what that person knows is that if they send out 1,000 messages a day, that 10% of them are going to lead to a conversation. Another 10% of those are going to become clients. It's a formula game, right? But what if that person started using AI? And I was speaking to a guy, David Awasi, who developed this AI scraping program for LinkedIn. And what it does is it scrapes your entire LinkedIn profile. So it knows where you went to college, it knows where you work, who your colleagues are, and then it could create custom messages. So once you start incorporating these custom messages at scale in those LinkedIn DMs, just as an example, well, now all of a sudden your conversions go from 10% to, let's say, 20%, right? More people are like, okay, this is not just spam. This person actually took a minute to look at my profile. They know all about me. They didn't. They're just using AI to do it faster, quicker, smarter. than the competition. And those are going to lead, I think, to more of those human connections faster instead of just random, worthless, useless, annoying DMs in the inbox. They're going to become human conversations faster.
Mm. Let's talk a little bit more about that. The faster, smarter aspect of this. When you look at all things generative AI, it almost seems overwhelming at times, right? Because there's too many options. It's every single day there's a new large language model, like we talked about today, with $1 billion valuation. So it almost seems hard to keep up with. In your experience so far, especially when it comes to getting more done faster, what are some of those different ways to automate those tasks? So whether is it using something like Chat GPT and Zapier, or what's kind of a good way to start to automate some of those tasks when it comes to automating your media marketing?
So, from the top down, podcaster to podcaster. And, I know when I speak to a business owner about using a podcast for media marketing, they're like, oh, I don't want a podcast. That's not what it's about. It's about turning a 15-minute Zoom conversation into your entire digital media presence. It's turning that 15-minute Zoom call into your blog, into your email, into your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your YouTube, your podcast. It's your onboarding, networking, it's everything, but you need to have the right systems in place, right? So just as a simple kind of like 3,000-foot overview of how you can make this look either within your organization or working with a marketing company, you record your 15-minute call. I'm really loving, are you familiar with Riverside? I know we're on StreamYard right now, but Riverside is a popular option. It's very similar to Zoom, right? Remote video calls. But after you finish recording your call, you can fill out a quick Google form, which can be connected with Zapier to somewhere like Google or to your WordPress site. It'll automatically start to write out your blog. It'll start to write out your show notes automatically. Riverside specifically will actually identify key points in the conversation and will create short clips that can be clipped out. So even if you're a novice when it comes to video editing, it can identify that stuff. You talk about LLMs. I just want to, again, just kind of actually back up. I'm getting a little bit too far ahead of myself. I'm getting excited. I'm always saying
this is what happens when we dork out over marketing and automation, right?
It's crazy, dude. Once you taste it, it's like, oh my gosh. It's like, I feel like I found Christ. It's, not to be sacrilege. But it's so powerful. And, because you talk about an LLM, every single word that you hear on a podcast, every single word that you see on a YouTube video is transcribed. It's all transcribed. And so what AI is really proficient at doing is taking those words and interpreting them, rearranging them, and predicting what the next word will be. So anytime, anything that you see written in digital form, whether that's an ebook or a social media post, AI is incredibly important at generating that. And you can do that automatically with certain systems like Zapier and pulling the text from the video.
Yeah. And what Mark is saying, so if you are listening to this show, right, and maybe you're thinking like, oh, I don't have a podcast, right? That doesn't matter, because what Mark's talking about right now, which is something I tell people all the time on the show, is especially in this new world of remote work, hybrid teams, we are spending so much of our time on Zoom calls or team calls or whatever. And what Mark just said right there, so much of what we do, it's either preparing for meetings, being in meetings, or the work after the meeting, and just using the right tool at the right time in the right way can save so much of your time in doing this. And so with that in mind, Mark, like, it seems like there should also be somewhere in this process room for Chat GPT, right? So whether it's taking those transcripts and working with it, or maybe connecting with teams over Chat GPT. But what are some ways that you think businesses can really start to automate their media marketing, whether it is a podcast like this or notes from a team meeting? What are ways that teams can use Chat GPT to get more done faster?
Well, so, one of the tools that I really like, specifically in that context of creating tons and tons of pieces of content off of one, let's call it Zoom call, is a program called Cast Magic. You may or may not be aware of it. Blaine Bogus over there, he was received a lot of funding, a lot of VC capital. He was featured on AppSumo. It's a great product because all you do is you upload your video, and it's going to create all those things that we talked about: the blog, the email, the the post, and it's all built off that open AI software. Open AI is cool in that it allows you to kind of build systems on top of it. So that's a really easy way of doing it. With ChatGPT specifically, there's a few cool things that you can do. One is create custom GPTs, which maybe we'll get into. But Zapier, if you're not familiar with Zapier is a life-changing software that connects softwares together that don't normally communicate. Okay, so I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I'll give you a perfect example for all you podcast junkies, people who are getting into meetings. You probably have some sort of app like Calendly that allows you to schedule out your meetings, your conversations. But before your meeting, you probably need to do research on who this person does, what type of questions might I ask, how is this relevant to my business, right? Well, what you can do is you can connect that Calendly using Zapier to ChatGPT. ChatGPT will look at who, based on the questions this person asked or answered, this is their bio, this is where they work, this is what they're interested in. You've already trained ChatGPT to know what your industry is and what your business is, okay? So it takes all the information, all that criteria that you've gotten from your calendar, that person, that new prospective prospect, client, maybe they're a guest on your show, and it's going to interpret that and give you ideas on where to go from there. So, for example, one of the things that ChatGPT might do is say, these are some potential ways you can work together. These are potential gaps in their business. These are some potential questions that you might ask that person to keep the conversation going. So instead of going in high and dry, you're going in lubricated, ready to hit it. And that's just a really powerful way. You can also, once you start looking at Zapier, you can have it create own custom Google folders. You can connect that to your CRM. There's just so many powerful ways to leverage Zapier and ChatGPT together in this way.
Absolutely. Big Zapier fan, and like Brian said too, Task Magic. Yeah, we're gonna have the Task Magic team on the show because we use it daily as well, and we have been for since the day we started. So great tools that Mark is mentioning here, and also we will update the show notes because we did an entire episode on Zapier, which I think was really well received. So couple questions I wanted to get from the audience here, Mark. So Zane asking, former guests. So what's going on, Zane? So Zane asking, with personalization, I can see response rates go up in the short term, but what happens when everyone starts to use personalized messaging? Great question, Zane. Mark, what's your thought on that?
You're leading from the front, right? So by the time listen, this 2024 is going to move really, really fast. Look, we're 2 weeks from Christmas, bro. Where did 2023 go?
Who knows?
You know what I'm saying? Where did 2023 go? 2024 is going to move way faster because by the time you figured something out, you're going to be on to the next thing, right? So sure, are you going to be doing the same thing for 3 months? Probably not. You're probably going to keep needing to adapt. Elon a few months ago had said that the New York Times is the Twitter example of verbal diarrhea, right? Which, okay, great, sure. Because what they were doing is they were just posting all the time. You're starting to see this in the podcast world too. People are using these AI tools to create so much content, it's just completely drowning out the system. So, the people that are leveraging these tools the best, just like this is not new. This is not new. The people that are using the tools the best, that have the best systems in place, are going to rise to the top, cream of the crop. But again, that's going to require you to lead lead from the front and start executing at the front. But I agree that when everybody's using these personalized messages, you're going to stop paying attention. You're going to look for what's that thing that's new, that's fresh, that's different. Maybe it's using those custom messages to implement some video or to implement some audio using a program like 11 Labs, right? So, or this is another great, I don't want to go way off the rails here, but ChatGPT, for all you pro users, you can make your own custom chat bots, which is really powerful at sharing tools to your company, which is really powerful for onboarding new prospects, which is great value for new clients. They make great lead magnets. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go way off the rails because I could start to really geek out on chatbots.
Oh, same. Zane, even to get to your question, and I'll say this, I think personalized, even with quote unquote AI, personalized outreach has already been around for many years, right? So this isn't something that's new with AI, with generative AI, with the GPT technology. It's already been out for many years, but like what Mark is saying, when you're leading from the front, sometimes it takes a while. So I think that by the time that everyone else, quote unquote, is using the personalized outreach, I think those people that, exactly what Mark said, those people that were already spearheading it or leading from the front, they're already going to be on to the next innovation, per se. Another great question here from Raul. So saying, are there any industries that you believe are more open to using AI in their marketing operations? Mark, what's been your experience so far? Are there certain industries maybe that you think are more apt to running with generative AI, and especially when it comes to automating their marketing?
I mean, honestly, I'd like to hear your opinion because I mean, the reality is that when you start using programs, like I was in church this Sunday and I was like, wow, I bet you could create some really good sermons with references just using ChatGPT to build out your plan. I was hosting a panel for the Parkland Chamber and we had the principal from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was on the panel. And I was like, wow, I bet you could create some really great lesson plans using ChatGPT. I bet you could create some really extensive experiments using ChatGPT. And it's easy to say, hey, ChatGPT, write me out a lesson plan about dissecting a frog or something, and it'll do the whole thing. So, I just think it applies just about everywhere. I think the big push in 2024, my prediction will be lots more AI used in the sales process and in the customer service process. That's kind of what I see. I think that's the big trend for 2024 because salespeople are very expensive. Customer service people don't always get it right. But if you have the right systems in place with AI, I think that will help you to go from a staff of thousands to a staff of maybe hundreds or less. So that's what I expect.
Yeah, and I'd agree with you there, Mark. I don't think Raul, just to get to the specifics of your question, I don't know if there's any certain industries per se that are maybe more apt to taking on generative AI, aside from those that are already in kind of creative, right? So your creative agencies, marketing agencies, I think sales companies and sales, the sales industry in general has been faster to adapt. Customer service as well. Just even what we're talking about with custom GPTs, I think you've already seen a lot of people build something like that for their customers, or by using third-party tools so they can kind of put that on their website. I think you've seen that a lot as well, and I think you'll continue to see that. Mark, let's talk real quick just about what you think is the next space. So let's just say outside of podcasters, because I think the podcast example is almost too easy. But if we go back to any industry at all, right? And you do have this, all of these meetings, all of these videos, all of these transcripts. Aside from ChatGPT, which we kind of talked about, what are some different ways that you can start to get more out of this knowledge base or this wealth of conversation that teams and leaders are having within an organization? What else can you do maybe outside of other mediums? Is there anything text to video or text to presentation that you think is worth business leaders to look at?
Yeah. Well, so one thing, just again, super practical, if you're on a lot of Zoom calls, which I know we live in the Zoom age, Zoom just launched an AI tool. So if you hop into a meeting late, it can give you some notes as to what you had missed so you can catch up right away. I use a program called Avoma, which I think is super, super slick. How often have you been in a Zoom call and you're like, and afterwards, after that hour-long Zoom call, you're like, I think, who was it? Was it Jim or Jerry? Maybe it was Steve. Someone said something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but what Avoma will do is, again, using this transcription technology, it'll highlight all the key points. It'll highlight everything that is said by a particular person. So you can kind of scroll back. Okay, this is everything that Jim said. It'll identify where was the longest monologue. It'll identify key points in the conversation. Maybe you're on a sales call. It'll pluck out that 2-minute objection that person had. And so not only is this really powerful tool for kind of assessing your own calls, like, I don't know about you, but the best salespeople do more listening than talking, right? And so so when I started using this as a tool for my sales, I was like, wow, I'm spending 60% of the time talking. I need to get that down. And so I was able to be more I was able to look at that, study it, and bring it down to more like in the 30 to 35% range of speaking. You're also able to train your team members, right? So if you see, wow, this team member, this is where the objection was. This is how my team member handled that objection. We could use a little bit of coaching there. So that's another, I think, really practical tool. I've been really impressed with what Avoma's tool is. You know what I think is also interesting, just as a side note, what you're going to see is you're going to see certain ideas that are really, really good, like this Avoma tool for Zoom. And you're going to see other companies start to adapt it, not to go back to ChatGPT and stick on that, but now you can use text to graphics. You can create your own graphics inside ChatGPT. You can create your own chatbots inside ChatGPT, which, I had some friends that were developing chatbots, and when they heard this, they're like, oh, wow, my whole business model is doomed. So, I think there will be some consolidation with the best tools, but these are some of my favorites.
No, apps. That's a great point. And, I'll also leave the link to kind of just a huge rant I went on about that, because yes, like, especially if you're a business leader out there and you're making decisions for the direction of your company, you can't, go all in on a certain tool or software that doesn't really have, people like to use the word moat, but I just like to say that doesn't have anything unique about it, that just can't be replaced by one big update from OpenAI or Microsoft or Google. So yeah, you really do need to be very strategic on, what kind of tools become a very important part of your workflow, because yeah, what happens if a big update comes in and it makes that obsolete? How hard is that going to hit your company? But let's actually do this, Mark, because as we wrap up the show, we've talked about a lot of very great, I think, takeaways for businesses or entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, that they can start to automate their media marketing right now, right? We've talked about Zapier, we've talked about ChatGPT, we've talked about, being able to, take video transcripts or, podcast transcripts and, make more content with that. But what's maybe that one takeaway that you have for people that if you were to say, hey, if you want to start to automate your media marketing right now, what would that one thing be?
What would that one thing be? There's so much. What I would say is get a clear. So this is a little bit 3,000 foot overview as far as it goes, but get a clear vision of all the steps in your media marketing process, and then look at which softwares have been designed for these steps in the process, and how can I incorporate them? Because there's just so many steps that when I look in the context of podcasting, which is how I generate all the content, is I need to research guests, bring on guest, respond to guest requests, bring the guest on, prep the guest, do the recording, process post. How are they getting added into my CRM and retargeted and how is my team getting the information on what to edit and how to edit? How is it getting distributed? You can use AI in every single one of these points, and knowing where and how to use AI to still keep that personalized experience, how to enhance the experience, not just detract from it, is where I'd look at. And again, we've talked about a bunch of tools today that we use in our workflow. But I love that. I will say I love that point of not being too comfortable in the tools that you're using. If you walk away from this with anything, it's that a lot of stuff we talked about today might not hold up in 3 months because stuff is moving. It's moving fast. So I think what's most important, what scares me the most, is people being apathetic to what's happening. And then you show up to a meeting one day and you're like, oh crap, I'm competing against a 20-year-old Malaysian kid that knows how to do this better than me. I'm effed. And I'm 50 and I don't have the time to learn all these new skills. You need to start learning now, because whether or not you're an expert in this particular topic or sphere, you want people within your organization, within your industry to know, like, oh, Jordan I hear Jordan talking about AI a lot. He probably knows something about it. And that's going to position you as someone who's irreplaceable, because you've got your ear to the pavement and you actually know what's happening in your industry. That is how you're going to stay ahead of this tidal wave.
Great advice. Great advice there from Mark. Yeah, you got to get your reps in. You can either, just be scared, or you can either just read about AI and try to observe it from afar, or you can start using it every single day. So then that way, when you or your company or whatever it is experiencing that growth or experiencing that first, company-wide integration in generative AI, you can be ready to go, just like Mark said. All right, Mark, thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI Show. We could have talked for many hours on this about how to automate your media marketing with AI, but thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Hey, and as a reminder, everyone, there was a lot. We talked about so much in this episode, different tools, techniques, all of that. If you missed something, don't worry about it. Maybe you joined us live halfway through your workout on the treadmill, or you're walking your dog right now, listening on Spotify. We every single day break down each episode, so you can read more about it in the daily newsletter. So make sure you go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for that free daily newsletter, a little bit more about Mark and what his company is doing in there as well. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you back tomorrow and every day for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.